The highest price silver ever reached, it reached almost half a century ago. Sit with that for a second. Not last year, not in the run we are living through right now. Back when a gallon of gas cost pocket change and a brand new house cost less than a modest car does today. That was the top. And here's the part the financial channels will never frame for you honestly, because it does not sell nervous headlines. Measured in real money, in what a dollar could actually buy, silver has never once climbed back to that old peak. Not in the last surge, not at any point in between. So let me answer the question in the title before I spend a single minute earning your patience. Silver at the level the title mentions is not expensive. It looks expensive only because you are staring at the number on a screen and comparing it to what silver cost when you were younger. But that comparison is a trick your own memory plays on you. When you adjust that long ago peak for everything the dollar has lost since, the real high sits far, far above where silver trades today. Which means the number that feels high to you is, in honest money, still cheap. That is the whole case, and I will spend the rest of our time together proving it to you, piece by piece. I want you to meet a machinist. Picture a tool and die man, mid-50s back then, calloused hands, a good union job, who watched silver go vertical and finally drove down to the coin shop on a cold morning to buy a few bars near the top because everybody at the plant was talking about it. He got burned. The price cracked and fell for years, and for the rest of his life, he told his kids that silver was a fool's game. Here is the cruel joke nobody ever explained to that man before he passed. He was not wrong that he overpaid in the moment. He was wrong about the metal. Because in real terms, the price he paid at what felt like the absolute top has still, to this day, never been reached again. The market never gave anyone else the chance to be as wrong as he was that morning. Think about what that actually tells you. Now, why does this matter to you, sitting there with $100,000 or more in a retirement account you spent 40 years filling? Because you are being asked every single day to judge silver by its nominal price, the raw number, instead of its real price, what that number is worth. And those are not the same thing, not even close. The dollar in your pocket today is a faded photocopy of the dollar that machinist held. In my years in the gold and silver world, I have watched this one confusion cost good, careful people more than any crash ever did. They look at a bigger number and assume they missed it. They did not miss it. They are looking at a shrinking ruler. Let me show you how the ruler shrank. Silver has bumped its head against roughly the same nominal ceiling twice now, decades apart. Once at the start of the 1980s, and again in the spring of a much more recent decade. Better than 30 years apart, and the raw number was nearly the same both times. Same ceiling. Now ask yourself the honest question. Did nothing change in those 30 plus years? Rent, groceries, a hospital stay, a college tuition, a truck? All of it multiplied several times over. But silver was supposedly worth the same both times? That is not silver holding still. That is silver being repriced downward, in secret, by inflation, while the headline number tricked everyone into thinking it went nowhere. And here is where it gets strange. That old peak was not a normal top. It was a spike driven by a frenzy, and frenzies overshoot. So you would expect the real price to have clawed back toward it at least once in nearly 50 years of money printing, wars, crises, and bailouts. It never has. Below both of those matching ceilings sits a base decades long, a coiled spring the length of a working lifetime. In my experience, the longer a market spends going nowhere in nominal terms while the dollar quietly rots underneath it, the more violent the eventual catch-up tends to be. I have seen this movie before, and it does not end quietly. Let me be honest with you, because that is the only way I know how to do this. I cannot tell you the day. I cannot tell you that silver reclaims its real high on any timeline, and anyone who promises you a price and a date is selling you something. Silver is a wild animal. It can drop 30% in a matter of days on nothing but paper games. I watched exactly that happen not long ago when the exchanges jacked up the cost to hold a silver position and the price collapsed in a week, even though not 1 ounce of real demand had disappeared, not one mine had flooded, nothing fundamental had changed at all. So no guarantees. What I am giving you is a case, a strong one, and the honest limits around it. The direction is compelling. The timing belongs to no one. And that brings me to the enemy in this story, because there always is one. Who benefits from you believing silver is expensive? The big trading desks and the financial media that carries their water. They make their living on your churn, on you buying the fear and selling the dip, on you looking at a nominal number and flinching. A frightened retiree dumping metal into a shakeout is their favorite customer. The last thing they want is for you to understand the difference between the price of a thing and the value of a thing. Because the moment you understand that, you stop being easy to scare. That understanding is exactly what they would rather you never sit still long enough to learn. Which is the perfect place to stop and tell you what you can actually do about all of this, because understanding the problem and doing nothing is its own kind of loss. Here is a fact worth chewing on. Gold recently passed the euro to become the second largest reserve asset held by central banks on Earth, sitting behind only the US dollar. Think about who did that. The most cautious, most informed institutions in the world quietly moved hard metal ahead of a major world currency. They are not doing that for fun. They are protecting themselves against exactly the erosion I just described, and you can use the very same door they use. My family put together a free guide called the Retirement Wealth Protection Guide, and it walks you through, in plain language, how an American with $100,000 or more in a retirement account can move a portion of it into physical gold and silver inside the account they already have, without taxes and without penalties. It is called a self-directed precious metals IRA, and it is the same principle those central banks are using, just scaled to your kitchen table. This is not just for insiders. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, this is for you. If you are watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. From our family to yours, no obligation and nothing to buy. Now let me hand you the deeper proof, the part almost nobody gets to, because the real money story is only half of why today looks cheap. The other half is the metal itself running out. The world has now run a structural silver deficit for several straight years in a row. Year after year, the world uses more silver than it digs up, and the difference gets pulled from above-ground stockpiles that were built over generations. Those piles are not infinite. They are shrinking. And the demand doing the draining is not speculators. It is industry. This is the piece that separates silver from gold, and it is the piece the mainstream still does not price correctly. Gold gets hoarded. It sits in vaults, in coins, in jewelry, and it comes back to the market when the price is right. Silver gets burned. It goes into solar panels, into electronics, into the guts of the modern world in tiny amounts spread so thin across so many devices that recovering it is not worth the trouble. Once it is used, most of it is gone for good, scattered into landfills and rooftops. Gold is hoarded, silver is consumed. And most silver does not even come from silver mines. It comes out of the ground as a byproduct of digging for copper and zinc and lead, which means that even if silver's price triples, miners cannot simply flip a switch and produce a flood of it. The supply is chained to other metals entirely. That is a shortage that cannot fix itself quickly, no matter what the screen prints on any given morning. And that is not even the part that matters most. Sitting on top of this shrinking physical pile is a mountain of paper. Far more paper claims to silver trade every day than there is actual deliverable metal to satisfy them. A handful of large banks hold enormous, concentrated bets against the price on the futures exchange. The registered inventories that back real delivery have been drawn down. Over in the East, buyers have at times paid a steep premium over the London price just to get their hands on the real thing, and importers have hauled it in by the boatload. When you have a system where 100 people believe they own the same ounce, and the deficit keeps draining the pile that ounce is supposed to come from, you have a slow motion problem that resolves in exactly one direction. Not gently. Let me widen the lens, because silver never moves alone. For years now, silver has lagged behind gold badly, and lately it has been closing that gap, playing catch-up the way it almost always does in the late innings of one of these cycles. The relationship between the two has compressed back toward its long-run average after silver spent years as the neglected, unloved cousin. That is the historical pattern. Gold leads, the crowd finally notices, and then silver, the smaller and thinner and wilder market, sprints to catch up, and usually overshoots. If you understand that rhythm, you understand why the people who study this metal get most interested precisely when it feels like it has already run. Now put the macro picture on top. Inflation cooled a bit in the most recent readings, yes, but it has been running above the Fed's own 2% target for years, grinding away at the value of every dollar you saved. The Fed itself, under its current chair, has been openly divided in its latest decisions, some members wanting to hold, some wanting to go the other way entirely, and a chair talking tough on inflation while giving markets fewer and fewer signals about what comes next. That division is not comforting. It is uncertainty at the very top of the system that manages your money's value, and uncertainty at the top is precisely the soil in which hard assets do their quiet work. There is even a signal that used to be reliable and recently broke. Gold used to fall when real interest rates rose. Lately, it has climbed anyway, even with rates high, as if it is responding to something deeper than the old rulebook can explain. When an old rule stops working, it usually means a bigger force has entered the room. If you doubt that governments quietly reprice money right out from under savers, let me hand you a piece of history that most people have never been told. In the middle of the 1930s, the United States government revalued the dollar against gold overnight by decree, dragging the price up by better than 2/3 in a single stroke. Not because the market demanded it, because Washington decided the dollar needed to be worth less gold. And so, with the stroke of a pen, it was. Think about what that means for you. The relationship between paper and metal is not some law of nature. It is a decision made by people, usually in a crisis, usually against the interests of the person holding the paper. That machinist thought he was betting on a shiny rock. He was actually betting against the willingness of governments to keep the dollar honest. History is not kind to that bet, and it has been made against him and against you more than once. There is a deeper lesson in how fast these things reprice once they break. I have watched sentiment turn on a dime. A mere hint that the Fed might slow down its support was once enough to knock gold down by better than a quarter in a matter of months on nothing but a change in mood. If a whisper can move metal that violently to the downside, understand that the same violence lives on the upside, coiled and waiting. Markets do not travel in straight lines toward the truth. They ignore it and ignore it and ignore it, and then they reprice all at once, in a rush, and the people who were early get the whole move, while the people who waited for confirmation get the leftovers. The real money story I have shown you is exactly the kind of truth a market ignores for years and then wakes up to overnight. I want to speak to the fear directly now, because I know some of you are holding silver and your stomach tightens every time you check the price after this run. You are wondering if you are the machinist, the one who bought near a top he will regret. I understand that feeling completely. Here is the honest reassurance and the honest warning together. The reassurance is that a top is a mania, and a mania looks like your neighbor bragging, your barber giving tips, a line out the door of the coin shop, the whole country suddenly an expert. Look around. That is not where we are. The biggest, most informed buyers on the planet are still accumulating, not selling. That is not what the end of a bull market looks like. The warning is the flip side. This metal will still shake you. It will have drops that feel like the world is ending. So the way to hold it is to own it in a size and a form that a shakeout can never force you to sell at the bottom. Own the real thing, not a paper promise. Size it so a scary week is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. That is not a prediction. It is just how you keep your head when the animal bucks. Here is what I most want you to walk away understanding, and it is the recognition that separates the people who look back grateful from the people who look back like that machinist did. The smart money has already moved. The central banks are already positioned. They accelerated their hard asset buying after a major power discovered its reserves could be frozen with a keystroke, because metal sitting in your own vault answers to no politics and can be frozen by no one. That decision was already made, quietly, by the most powerful institutions on Earth. The pension funds, the mainstream advisors, the financial television crowd, they have not made it yet, but they will. And the moment silver's real money story becomes the thing everyone repeats at the dinner table, the moment it leads the news and every advisor suddenly recommends it, the easy part of this will already be behind us. You do not get a warning shot. The repricing happens first, and the explanation arrives afterward, once it is too late to act on it cheaply. The entire advantage of what I have shown you today is that you heard it while it still felt early, while it still felt almost too quiet to matter. That quiet is not proof you are wrong. It is the last of the runway. So let me bring this all the way home. And this time, I want to speak to what you leave behind as much as what you protect. My family built the Retirement Wealth Protection Guide for people exactly like you, an American with $100,000 or more in a retirement account who wants to protect and diversify a portion of what they spent a lifetime building and a portion of what their children and grandchildren will one day inherit. This is about the machinist's grandkids, not just the machinist. And for those of you who watch all the way to here and mention that you did, we also offer a free one-on-one educational web conference just for viewers with 100,000 or more, no cost and no pressure, to walk through your own situation. The honest reason to look now is not some fake deadline. It is that this decision is cheapest and easiest precisely when nothing feels urgent. And right now, while the crowd is still asleep on this, is exactly that window. If you are watching on your television, scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. From our family to yours. And so we end where we began, with the machinist and his cold morning at the coin shop. He spent his life believing he had been a fool for buying silver at the top. But the market never once, in almost 50 years, let anyone else pay what he paid in real, honest money. He was not the fool in that story. He was just early, and nobody ever explained to him what early feels like. It feels exactly like being wrong. The number in the title of this video feels high for the very same reason his number felt high, and the very same trick is at work. Do not let a shrinking ruler tell you a cheap thing is expensive. Understand the difference between the price and the value, and you will already be standing where the smartest money on earth is quietly standing, long before the crowd ever figures out why.